All right, if you are a new rider and you are looking for your first motorcycle, this video is for you. I've got some advice and some perspective that I think that you'll want to hear that I think will help you out. So I've been a rider for about 25 years now. I've had a ton of bikes. These are my 3 bikes. I've got one more on the way. The bike that I have on the way is a Ducati V4R, which is like a $40,000 motorcycle. That value of that motorcycle outweighs these 3 combined, right? So I think just my experience and the bikes that I've ridden, the fun that I've had on bikes is something that you guys should hear. So if I was a new rider, you know, all new riders, they want to save up for their dream motorcycle, right? And that's what I did. My first motorcycle, I saved for years because I wanted an R6, a Yamaha R6. And I bought that bike and I was so proud of that bike and it was pristine. But, you know, after I had, you know, all said and done, I wish I could go back and I wish I could have been on a bike sooner. So, you know, if you're looking for a motorcycle, I would look towards something like this, my little Honda Grom, right? And you go, oh, this little Honda Grom, I wouldn't want to be seen on that. Well, take my perspective. I've had tons of bikes, expensive bikes, powerful bikes, and I still have this bike is a riot. This bike is so much fun. I've had so much fun on this bike. It's a different type of fun, right? But a small bike, you know, they say it's better to go fast on a slow bike than slow on a fast bike. And it's true, you know, riding a bike like this, slow in traffic, that sucks, right? That bike is made to go fast, right? This bike is, you know, it's not gonna go 80 miles an hour on the highway, but through town, I mean, you're gonna learn so much on a bike like this, right? So, you know, I would prioritize, you know, and my advice really is to get you on a bike sooner. That's the main argument, right? Don't save up for months and months and months and years to not be riding. As soon as you're on a bike, you'll realize that dream bike for you isn't everybody else's dream bike. You know, say you want to be on a sport bike and you get a sport bike and you're so proud, and then all your friends say, oh, how come you're not on a Harley, right? And very quickly you realize, oh, this bike was for me. This bike wasn't for anybody else but for me, right? And so just keep that in mind. You're gonna have a ball on a bike like this. Yes, all these bikes are fun. This bike is just an absolute riot too. But you know, you're talking brand new. This was, you know, $11,000, $12,000. You get into brand new, you get into one of these for, you know, a little over 3. And then a used market, you can buy one like that for what, 7, 8 grand, probably 8 grand with lower miles. You can buy one of these for like 2, right? And then you'll be able to sell it so much quicker too, right? So like when you want to upgrade, you upgrade. Think about your family. Think about, you know, your girlfriend or your wife who doesn't want you to have a motorcycle. You show up with one of these and they're gonna go, oh, you better return that right away. Why do you want that? You show up on something lit like this, or like a Honda Monkey, or, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a small bike like this. It could be, you know, CB 750, a CB, you know, 550. It could be, you know, I mean, those are carbureted bikes, but, you know, you get what I'm saying is if you show up on something that has a classic look, that is smaller displacement, people go, oh, that's kind of cool. They're not picturing you going 180 miles an hour. They're picturing, wow, that's kind of a fun hobby. I kind of like that. You know, tell me more about that bike, right? So, you know, I would say make sure you've got a bike that is reliable, you know, that's going to start, so you're not wrenching, that you're not, you know, taking it to the dealership and waiting for weeks to get your bike. You know, get on the road, be riding. Make sure it's safe. Make sure it's got, you know, brakes that work. Make sure it's got a chain that's not all rusty. You know, blinkers that are working, that hasn't been, you know, been in a wreck and, you know, it's got problems and stuff like that. You know, buy yourself something cheap, get on the road, get yourself some experience, and you'll have an absolute ball. You know, I would say to like the Harley guys, you know, nobody wants a Sportster, right? Sportsters get a lot of, you know, bad rap and whatnot, but, you know, think about the Harley riders. You know, a lot of Harley riders never rode anything else but their dream bike. And you think of all the guys that are getting in, you know, accidents, and, you know, then, you know, their first accident, and then they're never on a bike again, right? You know, if you start on something like a Sportster, which are still great bikes, they're even those are a lot of fun, and you can throw them around. You can, you know, they're quick. Yeah, you know, you're not going to go to some, you know, rockin' motorcycle meet, bike week or Sturgis, and people, you know, gawking over your bike, but you're gonna be on a bike sooner and you're gonna learn so much more on that smaller bike. And then when it's time to sell, well, you know, it's easier to sell a $5,000 bike than it is a $20,000 bike, right? You can upgrade to your next bike way sooner. So, you know, I would say don't be the guy who buys, you know, your 700-pound bike for your first bike and then you wreck it and then you swear off bikes and you never want to ride again, you know, or you know, think of the first time that you wreck, right? They always say it's not a matter of if you'll wreck, but when you'll wreck, right? So I caution you on that because there's some truth. You know, I've been down 4 times, been down twice on the street, and twice on the racetrack. You know, think about the first time that you go down. You know, your family's going to be like, "Hey, get off that thing." You know, we don't want you ever want you crash on one of these. You know, hopefully you're going, you know, slower speed, but you'll probably learn from it. You probably learn from it, and hopefully you're okay. Hopefully you're wearing, you know, gear. You got a helmet and gloves, and you know you minimize road rash and stuff like that. Or even think just like dropping it in the driveway, or you go to the gas station, you do something boneheaded, you know, you forget to put the kickstand down, or you know, let's say you get off the bike and it's still in gear and it, you know, it jumps on you or something like that, something silly because you're not used to bike operation, and you know it dumps over. You want to dump I don't know how much this weighs, you know, it's probably less than 200 pounds, or do you want to wreck a, you know, 400-pound bike, a bike that's very easy to get parts on, or a bike that's extremely hard to get parts on, right? Even like the Harleys, you know, maybe easier to get parts, but those parts are going to be way more expensive, and you might damage, you know, paint parts. You know, some of these, you know, this bike has been down. You replace a couple plastics and it's like no big deal, right? So I'm not saying a Honda Grom has to be your first bike, but just think about maybe not your dream bike. That dream bike can still be your dream bike, and then after you've, you know, had some experience, it gives you still a goal to work up to. You know, that dream bike will still be there. You'll still get to experience that. And I always tell people, you know, if you loved riding and now you're not riding so much, you just don't have the desire, it's time to change out bikes. You'll love it so much more having a new bike in your garage, you know, something new to experience, right? So keep that dream bike kind of in your back pocket, and upgrade at a later time. So my own personal experience, I wish I would have gone, you know, these bikes weren't around when I was a new rider, but I still wish I would have gotten something older, something that would have, you know, not broken the bank. You know, I remember I saved so much for my first bike, that Yamaha R6, that I didn't have an extra dime for a new helmet. So I was wearing a used helmet that was probably a little bit too big on me. You know, I was just dead broke. You know, I was bike rich, but I was just dead broke. So I wasn't wearing the right gear, and you know, I was a young rider. So if you're a young rider, you know, money matters a lot, right? So, you know, have some money in the bank, have some money to buy yourself some nice gear, have some money to go on a trip, have some money to, you know, don't just go somewhere, then just, you know, once you're there, then you get to experience, you get to spend some money, right? That's the fun of it. So, you know, that's what I know I'm repeating myself here, but you know, your dream bike it'll always be there. So get on the road sooner. You won't regret it. If you're looking at a bike right now, I tell you, you're tracking right. You're going to have so many good memories. And I'm jealous of you. I'm so jealous of you, because that first year of riding your first motorcycle, it's absolutely amazing. And all of us guys that have been riding for years and years and years, we're chasing that feeling again. That's why we're buying, you know, new motorcycles, upgraded motorcycles, more expensive, you know, this and that, going on trips. We're trying to relive that experience that you're gonna have. I just encourage you to have that experience so much sooner. You know, you don't have to buy the dream bike. So if you guys like the content, I've got a lot of videos out there now. Got more coming. I'm going to have that Ducati V4R that's coming soon. I'm excited to show you guys that bike. Give me a subscribe. Would love to share it with you. And I've got more advice for you as well. So you guys have a good one. Shiny side up. Talk to you later.